Welcome back to our live stream, A Short History of Chinese Ceramics, 5 objects in 5 days, in our gallery of Van der Ven Oriental Art in the Netherlands. We started the live stream yesterday when we discussed the Han Dynasty. We want to thank all our viewers who watched us yesterday, and we had an enormous good feedback. And one of the feedback...
Yeah, was that we should post if we could have a timeline of the Chinese dynasties to have at hand to talk about. So we posted that under the Discovery button on our websites for anyone who's interested in that. And the other was the request to show a few more objects from the same period. But for the ones who were paying attention, all the objects around us yesterday were of the Han period, and today they're all Tang Dynasty pieces. And we will be showing a few more and telling you a bit more. So there's a bit more context and a few more objects.
Don't forget, of course, our live chat, where you have the opportunity to ask questions to Nienke and myself. And
only relating to the objects.
Of course. Today we will discuss the Tang Dynasty. The Tang Dynasty of China runs from 618 until 907. And is a fascinating period in Chinese history.
It certainly is, and it's so iconic a period, and I think many people who know something of Chinese art will recognize the Tang horse, which is such an iconic object, because it's such an important part of the history of China, and especially the Tang Dynasty. And this is because of the Silk Road, and we'll be telling a bit more about that in a minute. But Floris, why don't you...
Yeah, the capital of China in the Tang Dynasty is Xi'an, the famous city of the Terracotta Army. And Xi'an at the time was a bustling, a melting pot of cultures. It was a city of over 1 million people, and the structure was very, very sophisticated. It had high city walls from 6 kilometers by 7 kilometers. The inner city was divided in squares, and they all had their own little government and gates that would close in the evening.
And in particular, it was divided between east and west. And the eastern area was for the Chinese, the civil officials, the imperial family. And the west was for the foreigners who came in with trade. And we know there were 4,000 immigrant families living in Xi'an in its heyday. And they were also traveling in and out. So there were also temporary foreigners coming in for trade. And there was a vibrant market in the west area of Xi'an, where all these goods coming over the Silk Road were traded. So you can imagine the smells of spices and the luxury goods coming in and out. And obviously, the Chinese living in the eastern part would love to come to the Western market to buy all these really amazing foreign and luxurious goods.
If you travel to Xi'an today, which I did in 2017 last, you still see so many different cultures in Xi'an, especially if you go to the central market and visit the famous mosque. You think you are in Central Asia and not in China. Nienke mentioned already the Silk Road. The Silk Road was the famous trade route. One of the routes was from Xi'an to all along Central Asia to Istanbul, then Constantinople. But there was also a route, for instance, to the north of China. So even North Africans would come to Xi'an to trade with the Chinese.
Quite, so you could see it more as a network rather than one single road, which some people think of when they say the Silk Road. It's just like one road, but it wasn't. It was like a network with cities in between. Think, going to Afghanistan, India, Central Asia, over the deserts. And these caravans, and it wouldn't travel, one person wouldn't travel all the way, the whole road. It would be like you'd travel bits of it. And especially for the desert areas, they would use camels and horses for transporting the goods. And I think this brings us nicely to our first object.
Yes. Let me tell you a little bit more about this horse and groom. This is made of clay pottery, fired clay. And the horse is made in a mold. It's made of separate parts, The body is a mold that works like this. Then you have the neck as a separate mold, and also the head is a mold. Legs are made separate, and the terrace. When the clay is dry, not fired yet, they will put the horse together, and then they will add separately the pre-made saddle, but also the manes, the hair. And look at the quality, the way they carved the clay. That's very important if you speak of quality.
It's very realistic as well.
Yeah, very realistic. Also, the amount of pigment, original color from the Tang Dynasty is still present. Tang Dynasty, I refer often to as the Renaissance of China. They wanted to make a real life-size horse. It has character in the face. You see the expression of the muscles. The proportions are very well done. This is by no doubt a horse.
Yes, and there's also some movement. There's always some form of movement, as if there's something going on, as opposed to being a very static figure. And it was so iconic. And horses were really important, not only for traveling the Silk Road, but also for military purposes, for playing sports, for hunting. And they became huge status symbols and very valuable trading goods along this Silk Road. And in return, the Chinese would bring silk and tea the other way, and back they got horses and spices and other luxury goods, which could range from pistachios from Persia and peaches from Samarkand, and all sorts of weird and wonderful things.
If you look at the type of horse, the race, this is not a typical steppe horse from the Chinese. This is a horse from the Middle East. He's like a fierce, strong
Arabian thoroughbred.
Arabian horse, and it would travel along the Silk Road. Because these horses were new to the Chinese, they often asked or got the groom, the guy who takes care of the horse, who's standing here. And this groom, if you look at the face in detail, he has a big moustache, huge beard. Look at the way he wears the hat.
Bushy eyebrows.
Yes, he's got very strong hands, and also the coat he's wearing is hufu.
It's called a hufu, yeah.
The hufu is typical of the foreigners coming via the Silk Road to China. And when we talk about dress,
yes,
there is a beautiful figure here on my right.
Yes, and it's not me. So it's this court lady, and sometimes known as a fat lady, which I think is always quite rude. But that's how they're known. The court ladies were also part of the tomb goods, which we'll go into a bit later, reflecting the fashions of the time. So not only the clothing fashion, but also the way the body shape in fashion. So at this period, it was fashionable to be a bit more portly than the slight period directly before that. And you can see this in the changing shape of the female figures. But the females were actually really had a lot of freedoms in the Tang. There was the first and only Chinese empress was in the Tang Dynasty. And the ladies wore beautiful dresses, and they wore makeup and rouge, and they had beauty spots, and they painted in their eyebrows. And the amazing hairdos actually had names, like referring to clouds and referring to butterflies and this sort of thing, referencing all the, the poofy hair which they'd pin up. And the hair would be long and then pinned up with the help of pins and horsehair to bunch it all a bit out.
The fat lady is an iconic figure. And,
court lady.
Sorry, the court lady. Thank you.
Fat lady's rude.
And it's part, of course, of this tomb culture, the life after death that the Chinese believed, the eternal life. The court lady would be in the tomb, and the tomb was guarded by a figure like this. It's also terracotta. He's called a Lokapala. And look at his face. He's fierce looking. He's wearing body armor. All these parts are like flames, and this is all to ward off evil spirits. I spoke about pigment, and look at the decoration on the front of the armor. It is original paint from the Tang Dynasty, giving a high quality element to the figure.
Yes, because actually the court lady has pigment on her too, and you can see the dress here, it's orange, but on the back you can see also some flower decorations. It was imitating the silks and the gauzy silk she would have been wearing. So,
Yes.
yes.
Are there any questions from the live chat?
Yes, we've got a question. And the first question is, was all the pottery unglazed?
Shall I answer?
Yes, answer it.
Yeah, no, not all pottery was unglazed. A lot of pottery was glazed. Glazing started already in the Han Dynasty, as we said yesterday. But if you look at the two large seated monsters here in the back, they're called Zenmushu. And if you look at their bodies, you see three colors of glaze: green, brown, and this light yellowish. We call that sansai, the three colors. And if you look at them carefully, you can see that some of the glaze is running. They could glaze, the glaze is very thick, but couldn't control it completely. And that's why you see on the right figure, the face is not glazed, but cold painted. It has too much detail, and they didn't dare to glaze it. Interesting part of glazing is that it is very durable. It's fired. So this glaze looks exactly as the day it came out of the kiln and was fired.
Also here again, glazed goods were more expensive and much more luxurious than the unglazed, and obviously the size as well. So I talked about how the size is important for the status of the object, and there were sumptuary laws in place which dictated the size and the amount of tomb figures that you could take to the eternal life. So in the case of this horse, it's very large, so it would have been a really big luxury product. The case of the Zenmushu glazed figures, they were large and glazed, so this must have been for someone really important.
Any other questions from the live chat?
Yes, we've got one more. Were the dresses and the hairstyles of the fat ladies, or excuse me, the court ladies, influenced by the international character of the Tang Dynasty?
Oh, absolutely. So the ladies would sometimes wear the foreign fashions like the hufus, but they could sometimes even wear the trousers when riding, which were influenced by the camel drivers and the horse riders. So yes, they would. So most certainly.
If this is the last question, then I think we've slowly come to the end of the number 2 live stream of the 5 objects in 5 days. All the objects you see here, you can see on our website, where you can see the exact size, if it's tested, whether what the price is. We want to thank you, of course, to join us in this live stream.
And we hope to see you tomorrow. Join us and we'll be covering the Ming Dynasty. So we'll be making another big step. And we hope to see you then.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.